Hello and welcome to Another Thing. I'm Larry Menti. This week we come to you from Newark, Delaware and the George Wilson Community Center. Inside, Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein is giving a campaign speech.
The politics of fear delivered everything we were afraid of. All those things.
After the speech, she agreed to sit down and talk with us. Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein. Dr. Stein, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. I've heard you interviewed several times, and one of the questions you're asked many, many times is when you have so much of the electorate looking for another option, why you're not doing better. And I've heard you say that there are impediments built into the process where people don't get to know you. So I want to give you the opportunity right off the top to introduce yourself to those that don't know you and tell them why they should vote for you.
Great, thank you. So I'm a medical doctor. You could say now I'm practicing political medicine because it's the mother of all illnesses, and we got to fix our sick political system so we can get down to solving all those other things that really ail us. The jobs we need, the health care we can't afford, the generation of young people who are locked in debt, the foreign policy that doesn't bankrupt us. Right now we're spending over half of our discretionary budget on these wars that are making us less secure, not more secure. We need to be putting those dollars into real security here at home. So we can solve these crises, and I'm the candidate that people are looking for and don't know about. This is why we need to open up the presidential debates to ensure that voters are educated and empowered to make a choice that's going to serve you.
Very good. You got a lot in. I want to talk about the debates in 1 second. It was also wonderful that you did that whole thing without talking about Donald Trump and whether President Obama was born in this country or Hillary Clinton being sick. Let me ask you about the illness before I get into the next thing. Do you think that is a serious issue in a presidential campaign, the health and well-being of a candidate?
Yes, I do. I think this is a legitimate concern. People want to know, what's the odds that this president is going to last for their 4 years or longer, and that they're going to be in good health to be able to do their job. I think this is one of those cases where you want to err on the side of transparency. So yes, I think it's...
So specifically, Hillary Clinton's health and this coughing fit and the pneumonia and her not being forthcoming is an issue.
Let me say, I think the health of the candidates in general is an issue. The fact that she's coughing and has pneumonia, I think, has brought that issue to the forefront. And I think the issue ought to apply to all candidates that people can have serious diseases, especially in their 60s and their 70s. People can start getting sick, and I think it's a reasonable area that the public should have a right to know.
I want to read to you a quote that I think you're going to like because it is the reason people are attracted to third-party candidates in this election. This is from Archbishop Charles Chaput, who was speaking in Notre Dame University yesterday, and his comments were controversial because he brought up politics. And he said the following, this is a quote, "The major parties have never at the same time offered two such deeply flawed candidates. One candidate is a belligerent demagogue with an impulse control problem, and the other is a criminal liar uniquely rich in stale ideas and bad priorities." Comment?
I think he reflects the way the American people are feeling. Right now, these two candidates have the highest dislike ratings and the highest ratings of distrust of any candidates in our history. Even the majority of their own supporters don't actually support them. They just really dislike the other candidates. So it's something like 1/3 of Hillary's supporters that are actually enthusiastic about her. Most of them are mostly motivated by not liking Trump. And the same thing for Trump supporters. It's something like 1/4, 25% of his supporters that actually support him. They just really don't like Hillary. And I think our political system has become so captured by big money, by the big banks, by the fossil fuel giants, by the war industry, by the health insurance industry. The parties have become so captured that they're no longer serving everyday people.
I've seen the most recent polls, and you're 4 or 5%. I know you've been as high as 7, as low as 2, but you're not making that threshold to get into the debates. And I know that upsets you, and I know you want the debates open, and I know you even filed legal action along with Gary Johnson. But they gave you a threshold. They told you this is what you had to achieve, and you didn't achieve it.
And then they went on to give $4 billion of free coverage, free primetime coverage to Donald Trump, $2 billion of free primetime coverage to Hillary Clinton. I've gotten practically zip. I think it's like 3 seconds of major news network coverage. So there's a reason for this, and it has everything to do with the major press circling the wagons around the 2 big political parties and the guys that boost their advertising. The president of CBS, I think it was, made a statement. Donald Trump is terrible for the country, but he sure is good for my bottom line. This is not what responsible press looks like. I think the press needs to do its job and to actually cover the candidates equitably. If that were the case, then we wouldn't have to be, clamoring to open up the debates. But it's not just me and Gary Johnson. This is what the American voters are demanding. 75% of American voters are now saying they want to open up the debates because they want to know who their choices are. The Commission on Presidential Debates, it's a well-kept secret. That is a private corporation controlled by the Democratic and Republican parties. The League of Women Voters labeled them a fraud being perpetrated on the American voter. So they do not have legitimate authority in the first place, as far as I'm concerned.
So the 15% you believe is set specifically to keep third-party candidates out, because you could get 15% if you got in the debate.
Yes,
there's
exactly.
a catch-22 in all of that. I have to move on a little bit, and I know there's a saying that, what do I have to do to get attention? You're talking about media coverage, get arrested, and you have a warrant now out for your arrest in North Dakota. Before we get to the specifics of that, you did call attention. I didn't know. And I look at the news every single day. I didn't know about the protests by Native Americans out in North Dakota because of the North Dakota Access Pipeline. Since the publicity about you being arrested, other people have gotten to know about it, and it was just, the administration just temporarily suspended it. You must feel good about that.
Absolutely, and I didn't go there in order to participate in civil disobedience because it's very inconvenient when you do that. You get arrested, you have to work the case through the courts and so on. And I did not intend to participate. But
why did you then?
Well, it was so moving to see, the dogs had just been turned loose on the peaceful protesters. I saw the road where their grave sites had been desecrated, which was just awful to witness. I saw that they were being pepper sprayed simply for standing up and asserting their civil rights and their civil liberties of peaceful protest, and saw that it is all of our water supply that's under attack, and it's our climate which is under attack. We don't need that very poisonous pipeline. There are much more healthy and sustainable, productive ways to be meeting our energy needs right now, not through a private fossil fuel company that has enormous influence behind closed doors to be ramming this through.
Do you think the attention about your arrest led to this suspension, this temporary suspension? Because now more people know about it.
More people know, and I think it also really threw down the gauntlet because I was challenging Obama in particular in my statements to the press and so on, that he needed to revoke that permit. Now, I'm not saying that's why he did it, but I think he was feeling a lot of political heat. This is why we need opposition parties. In my view, this is why sometimes civil disobedience is required. It shouldn't be the norm, but when you're really looking at desperate, critical impacts, not only on our human rights and our civil liberties, but on our water supply and our climate, we can't go back on this. If the Missouri River gets polluted, that's 17 million people who lose their water supply. We can't afford that. We got drought everywhere. We cannot afford to accelerate the climate crisis, which is going to really, give us a run for our money to survive even at the rate that it's going. We don't want to accelerate that. In my feeling, when I was asked, and I was asked by the protesters to participate, they asked me to lock down, and I did not want to do that, and I said no. And then they asked me, well, will you help us write a message? I felt like I could not, in good conscience, say no, They're putting their lives on the line for the water we all share, for the climate we all share, for the human rights and civil liberties we all depend on. The most vulnerable people on the planet are putting their lives on the line right now for us all. To me, that was the most inspirational moment of my life. I had to stand up and do what I could.
How will you respond, very quickly, how will you respond to the arrest warrant?
Our lawyers are working with the local authorities right now. We'll see if we can work it out without my going back. If I need to go back, I will. You know, when you undertake civil disobedience, you're prepared to deal with the consequences. And in my view, we are facing a crisis up there, which is really a microcosm of our environmental and human rights and water.
So if they need you there, you'll go back. If that's what it turns out.
Yes.
We will continue with Dr. Stein. She's been more than gracious with her time and talk about a couple local issues, fracking in Pennsylvania and the Coastal Zone Act in Delaware, when another thing continues. Stay right there.